Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Anila. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Almost 100 people are killed in a fuel tanker explosion in Sierra Leone. In Hong Kong, a health expert says some people may require a fourth COVID jab. And a couple from Cheung Sha Wan are arrested for attempted murder. A fuel tanker has exploded after a collision in Sierra Leone, killing at least 91 people and injuring more than 100. The deadly blast occurred in Freetown, capital of the West African country. Oil spilled from the tanker when it was hit by a bus. An explosion followed, triggering a fire which spread to nearby shops and houses. Many of those killed or injured had rushed to collect oil that leaked from the tanker. The government said it would do all it can to help affected families. At least 8 people were killed and several injured after fans rushed towards the stage at a music festival in the U.S. state of Texas. Officials treated about 300 people at the Astro World Festival in Houston and sent 17 of them to hospital. The tragedy happened when crowds surged to the front of the stage while rapper Travis Scott was performing. Around 50,000 people had been attending the festival, but the second day of the 2-day event has been cancelled. Locally, an health expert believes that those who opt for Sinovac as their booster shot against COVID may require a fourth dose. This comes as the government prepares to offer a third dose from Thursday. Emily reports.
抗體唔係話數字越高就一定係越巴閉嘅，夠就得。
When it comes to antibodies, a higher level doesn't mean it's better. That's what Chief Executive Carrie Lam said about COVID vaccines ahead of the rollout of booster shots for those in high-risk groups. But experts have long associated better protection with a higher antibody level. Protection has worn off more quickly for those who received Sinovac vaccines compared to BioNTech recipients.
Based on the current data, after receiving 2 doses of inactivated vaccines, whether this is Sinopharm or Sinovac, after 6 to 8 months, most recipients would have very low antibody level. So these are the fact. People who receive the inactivated vaccines, they are more likely to require another vaccine. So if you have the 3rd dose of Sinovac, then maybe in 6 months' time, you may need to go for the 4th dose.
Citing a Chinese university study, Hui said Sinovac recipients could get their antibody level up to 97% if they opt for BioNTech as their 3rd dose. Carrie Lam said she would stick with Sinovac for her booster jab. From Thursday, the government will begin administering booster shots to people in high-risk groups, such as those 60 and over, healthcare workers, and those with weak immunity. More than 24,000 people signed up when registration opened yesterday. Amelie, HKIBC.
2 domestic helpers from the Philippines are among Hong Kong's 7 imported COVID cases today. One of the helpers received 2 BioNTech shots in Hong Kong, and the other had the AstraZeneca vaccine in the Philippines. 3 other patients were also fully vaccinated, while a 2-year-old girl and an 11-month-old baby boy were not. 5 of the 7 cases had the L452R mutated strain. The number of local COVID cases on the mainland has fallen. The drop came as China again slammed the United States for its investigation into the origin of the coronavirus. Emily reports.
There are signs that a COVID outbreak on the mainland is easing, with 40 local infections reported in the past 24 hours, compared with 68 in the previous day. Heilongjiang remains the hardest hit with 16 cases, all in Heihe City. Authorities raised the alert level for a village there from medium risk to high. Hebei province had 9 infections, including 8 in Xinji, which has ordered citywide tests. 2 officials were sacked for failing to stop the outbreak. The National Health Commission warned of a more complicated situation as the winter flu virus lurked. State media, meanwhile, hit back at the United States for its investigation into the origin of the coronavirus. The Xinhua news agency published a list accusing the U.S. of defamation and refuting allegations that the virus was leaked from a laboratory. Responding to a claim that personnel at the Wuhan Institute of Virology were accidentally infected in November 2019 while collecting virus samples in the wild, Xinhua said no one became ill. An unclassified report by an American intelligence agency last week suggested the pandemic could be the result of a laboratory-associated incident. China's diplomatic relations with several countries, including Australia, have soured following initiatives to probe how the public health crisis started. Amelie, HKIBC.
More local news. A couple have been arrested for attempted murder after they allegedly tried to kill themselves along with their 2 young sons. Police were sent to Hoi Law Court in Cheung Sha Wan to investigate the suspected murder-suicide case. The couple, who are in their 30s, reportedly burned charcoal in their flat at around noon. Their sons, aged 2 and 6, were also at home. The parents put out the flame and opened a window after the children felt unwell. All of them were sent to hospital for treatment. Services on the East Rail Line were briefly disrupted this morning after an elderly man fell onto the tracks at Mong Kok East Station. The 74-year-old man fell off the platform and was hit by a Lo-Wu-bound train at around 8 a.m. He was strapped onto the train and was certified dead after firefighters freed him. Services between Hong Kong and Kowloon Tong were suspended for about an hour. A Chinese intelligence officer has been convicted in the United States of trying to steal trade secrets from U.S. aviation and aerospace firms. Xu Yanjun faces up to 60 years in jail when he is sentenced.
Xu Yanjun is reported to have worked for the Foreign Intelligence Office of the Ministry of State Security in Jiangsu Province. He was arrested in Belgium 3 years ago and became the first Chinese intelligence officer to be extradited to the United States for trial. Xu was accused of trying to steal technology related to General Electric Aviation's composite aircraft engine fan. He allegedly invited experts from targeted companies to join academic activities and tried to buy trade secrets from them. A federal jury in the U.S. state of Ohio today convicted Xu of 2 counts of conspiring and attempting to commit economic espionage and 3 counts related to stealing trade secrets. It's not known when he will be sentenced, but Xu could be jailed for up to 60 years and fined $5 million. FBI Assistant Director Alan Kohler Jr. said the verdict should be a wake-up call and accused China of stealing U.S. technology to benefit its economy and military.
Climate activist Greta Thunberg has accused world leaders of making use of the climate summit in Glasgow as a publicity stunt. Her claim came as youth took to the streets of the Scottish city to protest against what they see as a lack of concrete action to protect the environment. Johanna Chan reports.
Young activists rallied in Glasgow, disappointed that pledges to save the planet are all long-term. These include cutting methane emissions by 30% and ending deforestation by 2030 and reaching net zero emissions by 2050. The young campaigners accuse world leaders of setting deadlines far into the future.
We are out here to keep up the pressure and remind them that people are suffering and dying from the climate crisis and that there's no time to keep postponing action. This is the time that the leaders need to step up and do what must be done.
Leaders are giving beautiful speeches and announcing fancy commitments and targets, while behind the curtains, the governments of the global north countries are still refusing to take any drastic climate action. We are tired of their blah, blah, blah. Our leaders are not leading. This is what leadership looks like.
Inside the conference venue, a former U.S. vice president took up the fight on behalf of the world's youths.
We will then be able to say to the young people who are out in the streets of Glasgow and have been out in the streets of cities all over the world every Friday and other days besides, demanding that we legitimize their expectations for a future that is worthy of them. We can do so
As Gore spoke, the protesters urged global policymakers to meet young people and workers to map out a greener future. Johanna Chan, HKIBC.
U.S. President Joe Biden has secured a major victory with the House of Representatives, approving a $1 trillion infrastructure spending package. Lawmakers voted by 228 to 206 in favor of the bill, which now goes to the White House to be signed into law. In the country's biggest infrastructure overhaul in decades, $550 billion will be spent over the next 8 years to improve highways, roads and bridges and modernize rail networks. The initiative will create thousands of jobs and also provide funds for clean drinking water and upgraded broadband services. On to the weather now. It will be rather warm tomorrow with a top temperature of 29 degrees, but the mercury will start dipping at night and it will be appreciably cooler early next week. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Saturday nights. Join us for more news at 10 before a live football match from Germany. I'm Annie Lau. Good evening.